If you run a large business that does over $1 million a month, or you have an existing business that you're looking to scale to those sorts of revenue numbers, then it's important to keep in mind that the way you run and manage your marketing team at that level of scale is fundamentally very different in your approach if you want to ensure the longevity of your business. And in this video today, I'm going to walk through those steps that I've taken. So if you're not familiar with me, my name is Damon. I'm a fractional CMO. I've run a lot of different marketing teams over the last few years, scaled them from zero to as high as $1.2 million a month. And I've been able to see the differences in how you run your marketing team at each of those stages, whether it's at zero in the launch phase, or at 100K a month, you're kind of in the scrappy phase, or in more of the aggressive scaling stages throughout, say, 300 to 500K a month. And I've been able to see how I've had to shift my approach at each of those stages, more just on along the way, and want to be able to share those with you today, and also just provide the five biggest steps that we believe are needed in order to kind of ensure longevity of the business. So let me go ahead, share my screen here. Okay, so these are the five main steps. I'm not saying you have to do all of these. However, I would recommend taking action on these, getting the ball rolling with them so you have good systems in place for it. Because each of these are not really, other than maybe number one, they're not necessarily like overnight fixes that you can just like snap your fingers and be good to go on it. These take time, they take money. A lot of them are kind of a little bit expensive in the beginning to get good at, but these are the types of things that are going to give you that foundation where you can just be consistently making lots and lots of money every single month, be at that $1 million a month plus range, and help to avoid those kind of roller coaster revenue months I see so many businesses doing. So number one is diversifying your ad account. So if I'm just looking at the business as a high level, especially for me as a CMO, what keeps me up at night? What is going to be the one thing that I wake up at the next morning, check my computer at 5:30 a.m. and think, oh, fuck, this really just fucked my day, And that's, first thing that comes to mind, ad account goes down. I think a lot of people don't take this seriously, but, think about it like this. If we're doing $1.2 million a month in revenue, our sales team, when it comes to follow-up game, not that they're bad, but like if they're relying 100% on follow-up game and they don't have any lead flow whatsoever, their revenue is going to drop off an absolute cliff. That's just what's going to happen. So at that level of scale, let's say an ad account goes down for 2 weeks, not an unreasonable amount of time, in my opinion. That could mean a $600,000 hit to your top line in that case. Not just that, it could mean things like your sales team quits. Half of your sales team, if let's say you've worked very hard to recruit 6 really good, solid A-player salespeople. 2 weeks of an ad account going down, they might jump ship. They might go to a company that has a better marketing team that, had a good ad account set up like the one I'm showing you here. So you need to make sure you're diversified in terms of your ad accounts in order to avoid that kind of, slap in the face from Facebook, which happens pretty often in my opinion. So I like using this 3 account structure. Number one is the account with the pixel in it. So you don't want to have your Facebook pixel in the same ad account as the accounts you're running the traffic from. Because if the ad account where you're running the traffic from goes down, then it's taking the pixel with it. Versus if you have the pixel in a different account, then you can always just swap your pixel into the backup account, which has already been warming up, so you're good to go. So that brings me to my next point. You need to have a backup account. So we like having an account where we're just spending small budgets, $5 a day, something like that, just so it's warmed up, so it's ready to go. $150 a month insurance plan, I'd say. So that way, if an account goes down, we have something warmed up, ready to start spending. You can't necessarily just go and launch at like $5,000 a day on an ad account. I've pushed it to like $1,000 a day on a first launch on a brand new account, and that has worked, but you're probably not going to be able to launch at a big budget day one if the account's not at least warmed up and spending. So pixel account, backup account, and lastly, if you're, depending on your level of spend, for us, for example, we spend about $11,000 a day on this specific company. We like running it from 2 separate accounts. Again, we're diversifying risk here. We're trying to make sure we don't get fucked, basically. So spend $5,000 a day on one account, $6,000 a day on the other account. If one of the accounts goes down, we swap it into the backup account. We're good to go. We keep the ball rolling. That's, again, mitigating risk here. You don't want your ad accounts going down, obviously, but if they do go down, which does happen, you want to have a backup plan in case here, and this will help a lot with that. So number two, after diversifying your ad accounts, you also want to diversify your ad platforms. Now, this is not necessarily, marketers will go back and forth on this and argue all day long about this, but I personally believe that in the beginning stages, you want to focus on one. If I'm at zero and I'm in, a launch protocol and taking a business off the ground, I'm not going to go launch Facebook, Google, TikTok, LinkedIn, and go on a bunch of channels. I'm just going to launch Facebook. I'm going to scale that bitch up as fast as I can, try to get it to $500,000 a month in that range, basically get really, really good at one channel. And then when we're established, when we're in a good spot, then we want to diversify our ad platforms. We want to go and test out different platforms. Now, this is more of a macro level risk type of thing. For example, like every ad platform is going to have kind of bad periods. Like here, it's September 2025. It has been a rough month on ads for pretty much everyone I know. Facebook is making a few changes recently, and especially since Labor Day, these last 2 weeks specifically have been pretty bad for pretty much everyone I talk to. I'm not saying Facebook is going to go down as a platform, but these algorithms, they'll make changes, they'll mess with you for a little bit, then they kind of turn around. If I look at Facebook specifically as a platform, there are a lot of projected changes that are supposed to be made in the next 12 to 18 months. That's things like removing interests, removing targeting, basically putting more of the heavy lifting on the actual AI that Facebook has, putting more of the heavy lifting on the creative and less in terms like the raw media buying skills. I remember I've been running ads since about 2017. Back in 2017, if you had 300 purchases, you just create a lookalike audience on that, and that audience would just be insanely good. And then you'd pump your budget straight into that purchaser's lookalike, and you just basically have an ATM on your hands. That's just that hasn't been the case for a very long time, but using different audiences, using different targeting, it's becoming less important by the day. And I say that all that to say in terms of Facebook might have some volatility in the next 18 months. That's why we want to crack another platform like Google. When I say Google, I mean YouTube, actually. Google owns YouTube, for those of you who don't know that. But if I look at the various ad platforms, Facebook is great because it's fast results. You can get ads off the ground fast, get results immediately. But I will say at scale, Facebook is a little bit tricky sometimes. Spending 10 grand a day on ads, it has its volatility day to day. It's not the most consistent. Versus YouTube ads, I'm not an expert at YouTube ads by any means, but I know people spending as much as $250,000 a day on YouTube. And a lot of people say that it's just more consistent. It has less volatility. It's harder to get off the ground. They ban you all the time. It took us a month of just appealing with them back and forth trying to get ads live. But once we got it off the ground, it was a lot smoother. Plus, you have to run an opt-in page, which is kind of annoying. But so basically, we're diversifying ad platforms in order to mitigate macro level risk. If Facebook as a ad platform is going to be trash for the next 6 months as they remove targeting, that way we at least have Google coming in. Again, it's probably not going to be a huge issue, but we are being aggressively proactive about fixing issues. So that is number two. Number three, middle of funnel. Middle of funnel is very, very important. I've learned this the hard way this year. Do not make this mistake because it royally fucked me. And I don't want your company to get screwed by this too. But especially if you sell at a very high ticket price point. Our average upfront cash is $27K. We sell between $20K and $35K in that range. At that type of price point, you have to factor in how does the buying process go? Someone comes in off a VSL funnel, they click the ad, they watch the video, they apply, they book the call with their team. They, sales guy nails it, great call one, but it's a $35K price point. You're probably not going to be one call close. So they hop off the call, they do a little research, they Google your company, they Google your founder name and realize, oh wait, you don't really have much showing up. Why am I going to shell out $35K to this guy who, has an old company name on his LinkedIn and doesn't even have the company on there? Or you go to his IG, it's got 500 followers and every video just is complete garbage. It looks like AI made it, and not like in a good way, like in a bad way. Basically, you want your middle of funnel to be just airtight. Whether that is after someone's entered your ecosystem and before they have closed, whether that's organic, whether it's email list, IG, YouTube, even things like SEO. How does your SEO look? Do you have bad reviews? Do you have just a lack of content? Do you not have PR? You need to have this really dialed in. I'm not going to mention his name, but I bought like a program early this year. It was like $7,000 on how to buy a business. I was honestly just trying to swipe the funnel. I just bought a little low ticket product from them. And because I found it interesting, I wanted to see how they were running that low ticket funnel. But then, I started following the guy on IG, and I was like, wow, this makes sense. This guy's pretty smart. And I'm seeing his stories every day. I'm reading his posts. They're really well-written, long-form posts talking about like pretty in-depth content, like, pretty advanced tax strategy type stuff, which is, a topic I'm pretty worried about this year, to be honest. And then I actually pulled the trigger and bought. I was trying to swipe the funnel, but since the guy's IG was just so on point, I ended up actually buying and, writing a check for $7,000. That is, in my opinion, the power of having a really good organic. There's only so much you're going to do on cold traffic with the VSL funnel, but you got to get people into your ecosystem, consuming your content, following you, watching you. So that way, over time, you just have that leg up. I see so many of these companies that they're basically just doing high-level arbitrage. They run funnels, they take up one call, it either closes or it doesn't, they net the difference. Versus this allows you to kind of play the long game over time between email and organic. If prospects are following you for, 3, 6, 9 months at a time, that adds profit back into the business. If you can just keep people in your ecosystem until, stay top of mind for them until the money's right, the timing's right, then they can pull the trigger. That's huge. Having that middle of funnel, very, very key. So that's number 3. Number 4, creative testing. Creative testing is very important, especially on Facebook these days. You've got to factor in like when you are spending more money. If you're spending $1,000 a day on Facebook ads, it's super easy. It's like get one decent ad and you're kind of good. It's like there's not too much going on there. Versus, if we're spending $11K a day, that's broken up into like 30 plus campaigns that we're running at any given time. We're always testing new angles, testing new hooks, testing new banners, new ad copy, new headlines. One thing we've done really well this year, we've been running VSL as an ad and then straight to application. That's done really well for us. Or you can even throw in things like testing different funnels. If you're really crushing VSL funnels, test out a webinar, test out a low ticket funnel. You just want to be kind of trying things out all the time, because at a large amount of spend, your ads are going to fatigue quicker and you just want to have options. It's like, if you nail one type of creative that does really well for you, great. But eventually it's probably going to die and you need other things going. We like to do usually about 70% of our ad account is proven creative, about 10% or so, 5-10% towards retargeting and warm traffic. And then at least like 20% of budget is just like testing shit. And I would factor that into on the ad platforms, like you're testing YouTube ads, for example. So yeah, I got to ramp the creative testing. One thing I'm working on right now is getting good with AI, being able to write good ads with AI, write VSLs. I'm pretty good with email already, but just want to improve on that skill set. So if you can get really good at making legit ad hooks, legit ads with AI, that's going to help you a lot. So highly recommend giving that a try. And lastly, number 5, honestly, I'd say this is probably the single most, I know I'm talking about marketing here, but I like to think of it as client acquisition as a whole. So this is probably the single most important one out of all of these is sales team recruiting. If you don't have a good recruiting process in for sales reps, you are going to get screwed. It's that simple. I've worked with a couple of the biggest sales recruiting companies in the game over the last few years, and God, their life is just so much better because of the talent they have, the talent pool they can work with. They can just have solid reps ready to go that can step in and sell for you like very quick turnarounds. This will go a very long way for the longevity of your business. think about it like this. So let's say you're making $1 million a month. You have 7 reps. Each one is KPI'd, and I think that breaks down to approximately 150K a month in terms of their cash collected revenue projections. If you have 1 rep that quits, say first week of the month, that means you're effectively taking a 150K revenue hit, at least for the next 30 days. If 2 reps quit, you are looking at a 300K revenue hit. That means you're probably not going to be profitable that month, just being straight up. 3 reps quit, I can keep going on and on all day here, but like that is how I think about salespeople in terms of their place on the team. Plus, let's say someone quits, then you have to hustle and find someone. It's probably going to take you minimum 2 weeks, then give them another month to ramp. So you're looking at a 45-day period where you're taking that revenue hit. Obviously, their ramping month, they'll make some money. Otherwise, they won't stay on the team. But you do need to be prepared for that. And honestly, 2-week turnaround pretty quick, in my opinion. So in terms of sales recruiting, I think there's a couple things you need. First and foremost, you should have good recruiters. If you don't know good recruiters, I'm happy to put you in touch with some of my people for it. They do a really good job. You want to have someone you can go to that's kind of constantly recruiting for you, has a consistent pipeline so that people are ready to step in. So that's the first part. But the second part, and this is tricky, I'm not saying I've cracked this. I'm actually working on it right now, but you want to have sort of like a brand. You want to be a brand name company that good salespeople want to go to. This is super important. If you look at Grant Cardone's team, look at Tony Robbins' team. If a closer on some kind of random no-name offer gets, sees an opening that Grant Cardone's team's hiring closers, that the likelihood of them just being willing to say, I will leave my current role and go and work for Grant Cardone's team because they have good sales training, they have good culture, they have very high income potential. You have to be positioned as, I don't know how else to put it. You have to be positioned as a step up for a closer. The good salespeople are not just sitting around cold DMing people and reaching out to people trying to get on a roll. If you're a good salesperson, people know you're good. That's how I was a salesperson for 2 years. That's how the game works. They're in very high demand because most salespeople kind of suck. So the good ones, people know who they are. They try to keep them locked down. But these people generally have options. So they can go and just kind of have a couple target offers they're looking at and say, I'm going to work where I'm working now, but when a spot opens up on that team over there, I'm going to apply. I'm going to probably jump ship if I get the offer. So you want to be positioned as that brand that these salespeople want to work for. And that kind of comes down to those 3 things I mentioned before. A, what does the income potential look like? Salespeople that care about money. I think we all care about money. But if the income potential is not there, it isn't a high value role for a salesperson. Number 2 is, what does the training look like? Good salespeople care a lot about training. Are they investing money into their reps to improve upon their skill sets, make them better at what they do? And lastly, just kind of good culture, high standards. Most good salespeople I know they're all jacked. They're in really good shape. They believe in high standards. Are you able to meet those things, or are you just a poorly run team that's kind of a run-of-the-mill type of situation? So that's all I've got on sales team recruiting. And there's more to this for sure. But I think if you can nail these 5 things, diversify your ad accounts, diversify your ad platforms, get your middle of funnel in place, have strong creative testing, have strong sales recruiting pipeline. If you can execute on those 5 things, then if I look at what is really going to create risk for your company, it's really only macro level things at that point, which no one can control. No one can control if the economy takes a dive or if we enter World War III. It's not much you can do there other than, I don't know, go invest in real estate. So make sure you follow these 5 things. You don't have to do all of them right away, but at least start making progress towards them. Not going to happen overnight, but this will go a long way for the longevity of your company. So hopefully this is helpful. If it was, definitely drop me a subscribe below. I'm going to be posting a lot more stuff like this going forward. So thanks for watching.